Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey.
Oh, Marshall. I like what we've sort of involved in our setups here nowadays. You have a fancy green screen thing. I gave up, and so I have just my bookcases that are actually behind me and my little toy cars and so on. And I just realized that I can't. Is it Around the Horn? Is that the ESPN show? And there's always the one guy that like is the crazy uncle, and he has something written on his whiteboard behind him at all times, and it has nothing to do with the show.
Right.
Well, there's my one and only sports reference for this podcast. But hey, I think you're that guy.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Well, and I try to get something that maybe sometimes matches the theme of.
Oh yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
You're much less crazy than that guy,
Yeah.
whoever he is.
But yeah, I'm trying to stay on task. It's hard.
It is hard.
I struggle. I'm on the struggle bus, as the daughter would say.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, it takes us about 30 minutes before we actually can press record because we keep, going on tangents of stories we have for each other. So yeah.
Oh yeah. We never talk about the thing.
Right.
Till we hit record. And the thing this episode we're still on crucial conversations.
Yes.
And crucial conversations, it's those conversations when the views are opposite, the stakes are high, and the emotions are strong.
Yeah.
And it's like a movie trailer.
It sounds like a movie trailer, and I wish it was a movie, right? Because it's funny. You and I were talking about some stories that we cannot share on air of things that have happened just over the last week, where there were some crucial conversations that in some cases were probably literally life and death. Well, gosh, in one of them we know for sure, because there was a mental hospital involved because of some threats. And in another case, long-term probably so. And in a couple others, I mean, it's crazy how often this is happening. We'll be talking about this as we go through the episodes, that this is becoming a really, really important skill for a manager to have. And nobody really gets equipped on this unless you maybe had parents who, gave you some common sense about some of these things. But these are big, big deals. So,
oh yeah,
really excited.
Well, I think one of the things that as you were listing those examples, I was looking for the theme, and the theme was, in some cases, it was the surprise crucial conversation.
Oh yeah.
Like I thought it was going to be a regular coaching conversation, and it turned into a surprise crucial conversation.
Yep. This person needs help immediately.
Yeah, this spun up to a level of emotion, a level of viewpoints that I didn't suspect were there, and the stakes were higher than I imagined.
Yeah. And in some cases, you and I know of situations where we've had the coaching conversation with an employee who's, here's how high the stakes are for the business. They're going to quit. They're looking for other jobs because of one little thing. And the managers missed it. They missed that opportunity to make it a crucial conversation because they just didn't have their radar on about the communication that they had with this employee. So we know that this little series is going to be of value. So anyway, we talked last time about start with the heart, and this idea that, if you really cared about this conversation, if you really knew that this was going to be a crucial conversation for those three reasons: high stakes, high emotions, opposing viewpoints, well, you need to sit down and think through, what do I want for myself? What do I want for the other person? And what do I want for the relationship? So you can go back and listen to the last episode about that. But this one kind of builds on it, where this one's called Learn to Look. And the idea is that if you really did want that crucial conversation and wanted that change in whatever it is, if you really valued the relationship, well, you wouldn't choose silence or violence. You'd choose the dialogue. Mm-hmm. And so we need to define what silence and violence means. But that's the gist here, is I need to look at myself mainly and see, what part of this do I play so that I make sure I'm not the one guilty of silence or violence here.
Yeah, and we're still in the pregame prep for the crucial conversation.
Right.
So start with heart, learn to look, and I think the author could have expanded it, learn to look at yourself.
Yeah.
What's the situation? What was my role in this situation? And we hear this all the time. They're pointing at the team member. You got somebody saying, well, my team member's done this or my team's doing that. And very seldom do they ever follow that up with. And I think part of it's because I fill in the blank. And this is that part of, this situation has gotten to this point because I didn't have a coaching conversation, because I allowed something, because and so this is all about, all right, so I got to own part of this. And now's the time to have that conversation with myself about what do I own and what behaviors did I put forth that contributed to this situation that we're currently in.
Well, can I tell you a story about that?
I should have worn my pajamas.
You really should have.
Yeah.
Although you might soil them. I mean, that's how crazy this story is. But
I feel like Fred Savage in The Princess Bride.
My kid, okay, I got to tell you, my kids just watched that for the first time, and our local elections over the last week, a lot of yard signs are going up, and we apparently have a local candidate that they have decided looks like Prince Humperdinck.
Oh,
and I
nice.
I feel so sad for this guy. Anyway,
inconceivable.
You're right. Such a good movie.
Yeah,
such a good movie.
Okay.
Yep. Anyway, so here's a story. So this is you've heard of Samson and Delilah from the Bible,
Yep.
We all know the little bit of the gist of the story, that he's seduced by Delilah, ends up losing his strength because she cuts his hair. Well, the story really should be called Samson, his first wife, a hooker, and Delilah. And it's
now the story sounds much more interesting.
It doesn't it though? Doesn't it?
I'm suddenly leaning in. This is good stuff right here.
And I'm only going to give you the parts of the story that apply to this silence and violence idea. But the gist of the Samson character is that an angel announces his birth and says, from the womb, this is going to be dedicated to God. This young man is going to be someone that if he lives a certain way, doesn't cut his hair, stays pure in a lot of ways, that he will begin to save Israel from her enemies. The Philistines at the time were the big oppressors. So fast forward, Samson decides to fall in love with a Philistine, or at least he says she's right in his eyes. That's how he puts it. And they do a wedding feast. I'm skipping a lot of the story here, but just know that eventually there's a week-long wedding feast with this young woman who's one of the enemies, actually. And she starts nagging him and crying and saying, you don't love me because you won't tell me the answer to the riddle. Well, the riddle was that he bet that the bridal party of the Philistines couldn't solve this riddle that he had come up with. And it was a bet. If he won, they were going to give him 30 pairs of clothing, sets of clothing. If he won, he had to give them 30. Well, she nags and cries for, the whole week worth of this wedding festival celebration thing. And, I'd love to tell you that the story is that he says, honey, this is really weird. Like we're newlyweds, we ought to be happy, but you're crying. That just seems really out of character on our wedding week, that you're this upset about not knowing the answer to a riddle. Is there something I don't know? Is there something going on here? And then she could have said, yes, the Philistines in the town have threatened me and my father that they're going to burn us alive if you don't tell the answer to the riddle. But instead, what Samson does is he says, whatever, fine, I'll just tell you. And he tells her, she tells them, and he loses the bet. And then, of course, Samson, again, he could have said, you know what, this really hurts. My own in-laws and my family, this really hurts that you guys would trick us and get us to where we're fighting each other in the middle of our own wedding week. And I can't believe you're doing that. And, we're going to set up some boundaries with you guys, and we're going to go live in Israelite territory. But instead, what Samson does is he goes into town, beats up, probably kills 30 men, takes their clothing, hands them off to the wedding party and says, here's your clothes, and then leaves. And I don't mean leaves, I mean like leaves the marriage, like runs back home and doesn't even tell them. And she gets married off to somebody else. She gets married off to the best man. He at some point, tries to come back. That doesn't work out very well. A lot of people die. He gives up, goes to a hooker. They try to kill him again. That doesn't work out very well either. A lot of people die. And then he ends up with another Philistine, Delilah. And this one is, it's really kind of creepy because Delilah uses that same, sort of nagging and you don't love me and all that. Why don't you tell me? And it's not a riddle this time. It's tell me the secret to your great strength. You have all this strength from your God. Tell me what's the secret? Well, he makes up, he lies and tells her, oh, it's this. She puts him to sleep, does the thing that he said, and then says, Samson, wake up, the Philistines are upon you. And of course he busts out, the bonds that she put him in, and he's ready to, break bad. So he knows that she's literally trying to get this secret out of him so that she can hurt him. And he stays. He doesn't have a conversation with her or anything. He just stays. And I don't know if it's the next night or later, but eventually, she brings it up again, Samson, come on, tell me seriously. And instead of, at this point, the story could have ended and he could have said, hey, look, I don't think this is healthy. You're trying to get some stuff out of me that can only be hurting me. What's going on here, right? And instead, it turns out that the answer is she's been bribed and she's going to get a ton of money if she can tell the Philistine leadership, the secret. Well, it happens again. And of course, he lies again. And it happens again. And of course, he lies again. But eventually, the nagging wears on him to the point of death, it says. And he just says, you know what? Here's the real truth. Cut off my hair. I'm done for. Hair gets cut off when he's asleep. Wakes up. He's arrested. Eyes gouged out. Thrown in jail as a slave. The story has an ending that I won't even bother with because it doesn't apply to our whole mess here. But yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples of people using either silence or violence in the story instead of having an actual honest to God conversation. And look how much trouble it caused. It just continued to spiral further and further out of control. So there's an example of how this can play out. Even in ancient times, they were really wrestling with this whole concept of, can we just talk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was so much. Yeah, so many times. The conversation would have solved the problem.
Right.
And it went to such extremes when the conversation did not take place.
Tens of thousands of people die in the story. I mean,
right.
literally, high stakes, high stakes.
Right. Yeah. And, and it all stems, from the nagging. A lot of nagging in this story,
And Samson, and sometimes this guy is me. Sometimes it's managers that I work with. We look like we've got it all together, right? And we're tough. We're put together. Nothing really rattles us. And then you ask us to go have a conversation with somebody about, like we said in an earlier episode, body odor, or the one employee who is thinking about quitting and just name the scenario, name the conversation that you've avoided or came in too strong on and didn't actually make it a conversation. And that's why we're talking about this. We're all, Samson's got superhuman strength, but he can't hang. And that's what we're trying to help people do, is equip them to be able to hang in those dialogues.
Oh yeah. We could have saved 3 marriages, 100,000 lives. But other than that,
no big deal.
So it's like a combination of Sleeping with the Enemy, Pretty Woman, and Man of Steel. see where all these, origin stories are coming from.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's all out of this. So when you think about this, so now if we pay attention to the model outlined in the book,
Yep.
we would have to ask Samson,
Yep.
all right, so what did you do that contributed
Right.
to this situation?
Right.
And I'm sure he's, like, it's going to be hard for him to think of anything at first.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh no, I was just trying to, eat, sleep, and the next thing you know, it's nagging me into stuff. So, and I think it goes back, to your point, right? Were there some conversations that you could have had that would have de-escalated this thing? That we would have found our mutual purpose, and we would have gotten back to that,
Yeah,
in a better way. And we run into this with managers all the time. And when I read this part of the book, it was, you don't, that saying, you don't get what you expect, you get what you allow.
yeah,
And so, at some point you've allowed the person to come in late, you've allowed them to underperform, you've allowed them to not follow crucial rules, you've allowed something, and now you're trying to rein it back in.
right.
And so when you look at this, it was probably one of those things that could have been solved much sooner. And now it's gotten to a point where it's now a crucial conversations. Emotions are high, viewpoints are strong, and this thing is a high stakes endeavor.
And maybe it was a crucial conversation from the get-go, but it was just a tiny conversation. It could have been over and done with, and that whole branch of the story that spins out of control would have been just shut off from the future.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the hard part.
One that we seem to hear about a lot here recently is the pay raise.
Yeah.
The employee comes in and says, listen, I need a pay raise or I'm leaving. Or I need a performance review and a pay raise or I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager's first thought is, man, you're unreasonable, and this came out of the blue. And then when you start talking to the manager, you realize, in the history of this person's employment here, we haven't regularly sat down and talked about the pay and performance and how do you get to the next level and where you stand now, and just all these neat conversations that had they taken place, we wouldn't be at the point of now we got to have a crucial conversation.
Right. And I think sometimes managers feel like they have talked about it, but this whole silence and violence concept, Samson stalks off, Samson gives in and avoids confronting somebody and having a real talk, but that's not always what it looks like. Sometimes it's masking. You're sort of understating the problem, sugarcoating a little bit, maybe even using some sarcasm. Maybe it is just totally avoiding, like Samson did, and just steering away from that problem, or just not talking to that person ever. Like, we know of people that have gone to different shifts so that they don't ever have to deal with each other anymore. Well, none of those things are going to be healthy for that employee long term to be a producer who stays with the company.
Well,
so
even we've got that stat around who should you spend your time coaching, and there's some research out there that says 50% of your time should be spent with your top performers, and many managers that we work with, that they're spending 50% of their time or more with the people who are creating the biggest fires and the complainers and the whiners and the people who aren't contributing. And when you show that to managers, and they'll look at it and they'll go, well, no, I just leave them alone. They're they don't need.
They're so good, I leave them alone.
Yeah, they don't need my help. They know what to do. They're out there running ahead of the pack. Right. And I said, they do that up until the point where they walk up to you and give you their 2-week notice. Yeah. And they say, listen, you guys have been great, but I'm leaving. And then the manager says this, I had no idea anything was wrong. Yeah. Well, of course you didn't. Yeah. Didn't spend time with them. You were letting them run. You weren't talking to them. And so these regular check-ins, and that's the self-analysis piece of, okay, what role did I have to play in this top performer leaving?
Yeah.
And in this case, it wasn't me solving a negative, it was me providing positive reinforcement and letting them know that they're valued and appreciated for the top performance. And I probably could have kept them.
Yeah, and so that's a great example of the silent side of the equation. You know, if you're just withdrawing or avoiding or masking or maybe even sarcasm, and just sort of not having the direct conversation, especially for the good employees, quote unquote, you're possibly going to lose them. The other part of this mirror to look in is the violence. And the idea here, what have I contributed? Well, maybe what you've contributed is a lot of heat. maybe you have upped the stakes on this one. And it could be by, simple things like cutting people off and never letting them have a say when you have that sit down. I brought up this manager before that was a great closer, a really good salesperson, really good closer. And in his management style, that's what he did, is he closed his people on what he wanted them to do. And he'd lean down next to him and, can you see how this would be? But they never really got to talk. Right. So, he'd end up, he might even overstate the facts a little bit or speak in these absolute black and white terms. This is good, this is bad. I never saw him belittle people, but that certainly would be violence too, right? If you labeled something, gave it a name.
Oh yeah. Or even, I hear this one, the way I see it, there's really only one thing we need to do.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was more than one, but apparently I was wrong.
Right.
And yeah, whatever you're about to say is obviously what I have to do. And
yeah.
So you beat me down, but in just a really nice, friendly way.
Yeah. And again, some employees are not, but they won't say anything to you, right? Some employees are going to go along with that right up until they leave.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. If you were to look at this, you'd obviously see that this is what needs to happen.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty
okay,
obvious.
boss.
I'll go do that.
Right.
And it looked like a conversation. It looked like a discussion, but it truly wasn't.
Yeah. And I bet the manager leaves that conversation going, good talk. All right. Really told them a lot.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And they were so receptive.
Right.
Yeah. They just soaked it up like a sponge. No, they didn't. Yeah. They just took it. So yeah, I think this is fantastic. So before, we've got two more things that we would like for you to do before you even start the conversation.
Yes.
So start with heart. Why are you having this conversation? And then learn to look. How have I contributed to the problem? And then this last little idea of learn to look is how would I behave if I really wanted the results that I'm shooting for?
Yeah.
How would I behave if I wanted this person to stay here a long time and be loyal to the company? How would I have behaved if I wanted them to come in on time? How would I behave if I wanted them to continue to grow and develop? How would I, start to ask yourself, okay, so, here's what I did that contributed to it. What could I be doing in order to not find ourselves in this position?
And this is scary, right? Because this is probably a change of behavior, possibly even directly with this person, right? Having the conversation, apologizing for things that you may have done in the past. There are some things that you might need to do to restore this relationship, because usually that's what we want, right? Is there's an outcome we want, but we also want that relationship to be maintained. If for no other reason than we want to work with these people, and keep them in the company. But I bet it's more than that too.
Oh yeah. And for those of you out there who are completely disappointed that you might be the problem, I thought this was going to be about coaching the other guy. Well, it is. It's about having a conversation with the other guy. But before we can do that, we have to examine, all right, what did I do that helped contribute to the situation that we're in?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that hurts. That's painful. And but it's a crucial part of the conversation.
It is, and we've got much more to say. We have some help on naming your emotions. We have some stuff coming up on how to script this conversation, how to make sure you're being very true and logical about what's really going on in the situation. So keep coming back. We'll have more of this, but for now, I think Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. So we're inviting you to look in the mirror and say, what part of this do I own?
I knew some ancient Greek guy would show up somewhere.
Yeah, I couldn't stop it. I just couldn't stop it.
Can't help yourself. All right, speaking of ancient guys, let's see what our announcer has to say.
And that's a wrap. It doesn't take a genius. The blog dedicated to reducing the irreducible. Next time, prime numbers. What makes them so special? Join us then, and thanks for listening.
That's good enough.